Hello, welcome to the lecture on the ethics of belief. So the main question for this area of inquiry is it ever okay to believe something without sufficient evidence? So here you have a picture of a guy sort of taking a leap over a cliff. And, similar to, say, a leap of faith. So what do you think? Is it ever okay to believe without sufficient evidence? Consider these cases. Number one, doctors tell you that you have cancer and are unlikely to survive. Psychological research shows that people who are sick are more likely to survive if they believe they will survive than if they don't. Is it okay for you to believe that you will survive even if the evidence suggests that you won't? So, is it the most rational thing in this case to just believe in proportion to the evidence? Say the doctor tells you you have a 20% chance to live, and then you believe you have a 20% chance, or do you? Is it okay, permissible, rationally speaking, or even morally speaking, to believe that you will survive in spite of the odds? Number two, suppose that you own a ship that is about to carry passengers across the ocean. You haven't checked the ship for a while for seaworthiness. She's been a good ship in the past, and you have a gut feeling that she'll make the trip. Is it okay to skip the maintenance check? And here, you have lots of lives riding on sort of your decision whether or not to do the maintenance check for the ship. Is it rationally okay to not check the ship in spite of the lack of evidence? Okay, it's been a while, all you have to go on is a gut feeling, that sort of thing. So this is the kind of question that Clifford wants to ask. And here he is, he wrote this work called The Ethics of Belief, lived in the 1800s, and he was a mathematician and a philosopher. Apparently he could also do one-armed pull-ups, which is pretty impressive. But he says that it is never permissible to believe on insufficient evidence. Never okay for anyone, anywhere, ever. So Clifford thinks that it is always wrong, it is wrong, always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. And he gives the ship owner example to sort of illustrate this. A ship owner was about to send to sea an emigrant ship. He knew that she was old and not over well built at the first, that she had been seen many seas and climes, and often had needed repairs. Doubts had been suggested to him that possibly she was not seaworthy. These doubts preyed upon his mind and made him unhappy. He thought perhaps he ought to have her thoroughly overhauled and refitted, even though this should put him at great expense. Before the ship sailed, however, he succeeded in overcoming these melancholy reflections. He said to himself that she had gone safely through so many voyages and weathered so many storms, that it was idle to suppose she would not come safely home from this trip as well. He would put his trust in Providence, which could hardly fail to protect all these unhappy families that were leaving their fatherland to seek for better times elsewhere. He would dismiss from his mind all ungenerous suspicions about the honesty of builders and contractors. In such ways he acquired a sincere and comfortable conviction that his vessel was thoroughly safe and seaworthy. He watched her departure with a light heart and benevolent wishes for the success of the exiles in their strange new home that was to be, and he got his insurance money when she went down in mid-ocean and told no tales. So here we go. We have a ship owner who didn't do the regular checkup for his ship and then sent her off to sea. She sank and lots of lives were lost. What Clifford says is the ship owner had no right to believe on such evidence because he lacked the sufficient evidence to justify his belief. And two, he is morally responsible for the consequences of his actions. And he did something morally wrong in believing that this ship was seaworthy. Okay, so the fact that the ship went down and those lives were lost, he should be held morally responsible for that, according to Clifford. So no, he doesn't get a pass due to the sincerity of his belief. Maybe he believed with all conviction that his ship would make it. That doesn't give him an excuse. And two, he doesn't get a pass if the ship arrives safely at its destination. He's still responsible for the fact that he didn't do his due diligence in getting the ship checked. So why we are responsible for our beliefs and why we should always proportion our beliefs to the evidence. So Clifford doesn't think that this just applies to the ship case. He thinks it applies in general for all of our beliefs. So in the ship owner case, what was wrong with that? Well, his beliefs had an impact on others, and so therefore he was responsible to sort of proportion his beliefs to the evidence. But then Clifford said all our beliefs impact others. No belief is insignificant or private, but it always leads to actions, and actions impact others. So according to Clifford, even the most private of your beliefs, a belief that you never let anyone know or try not to act as if it's true or whatever, even that is going to have an impact on your behavior, and you're going to be held accountable for that. A response to Clifford. So here's someone who's trying to, react to Clifford's claim that we must always believe on sufficient evidence, right? And specifically looking at the ship owner case and another case that we did not cover, but you don't need to worry about that. It may be said, however, that in both of these supposed cases, it is not belief which is judged to be wrong, but the action following upon it. So this response is saying, well, the action that followed from the belief, we should hold the person responsible for that, and that would be that action was wrong, not checking the ship. But the belief itself, we should not be held accountable for those. We should, those are sort of private. Those, if they don't lead to, great consequences, then they don't really matter, morally speaking. So Clifford's response is, number one, he makes a concession. He says, okay, it's true that however firmly a person believes something, they still have a choice of acting on that belief. So even if you believe something, you can choose not to act on it, he says. And two, it's true that if a person cannot control their thoughts and feelings, well, at least they can control their actions. So if you can't control your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, hey, you can control your actions. You don't need to act on them. However, in spite of this, he doesn't think the response is adequate. The sort of response to his initial claims. 3, however, belief and action are so tied together that you can't condemn one without condemning the other. So belief inevitably is tied to action, it leads to action, and action stems from belief. So if you condemn action, you must condemn the belief. That's one response. And another is, no belief is insignificant. All beliefs eventually influence one's action. It prepares us to receive more of its like, confirms those which resembles it before, and weakens others. And so gradually it lays a stealthy train in our inmost thoughts, which may someday explode into overt action and leave its stamp upon our character forever. So even if you think you're hiding this belief, it's private, nobody knows about it, eventually it's going to sort of infect your other beliefs, and it's going to lead into action, it's going to form your character, which, actions stem from character. So what he says is, no man's belief is private, but is common property that the next generation inherits. So your belief system is common property in society, and your kids or your nephew or niece, they're going to inherit your belief system. So from this, he says, it follows that it is wrong to believe on insufficient evidence. Since no belief is insignificant and every believer leaves his impact on society, it is wrong to believe anything on insufficient evidence. Leaders, statesmen, philosophers, poets, each has his duty to mankind, and that's obvious, isn't it? They're sort of prominent in society. But even every rustic who delivers in the village alehouse's slow and frequent sentences may help to kill or keep alive the fatal superstitions which clog his race. Every hard-worked wife of an artisan may transmit to her children beliefs which shall knit society together or rend it in pieces. No simplicity of mind, no obscurity of station can escape the universal duty of questioning all that we believe. All right, so this is, a bit of rhetoric in order to make a point. It doesn't matter what your station in life is. And it doesn't matter, if you think you have no impact on others, you have a responsibility to believe on sufficient evidence for the benefit of mankind. If a man holding a belief which he was taught in childhood or persuaded afterwards keeps down and pushes away any doubts which arise about it in his mind, purposely avoids the reading of books in the company of men that call into question or discuss it, and regards as impious those questions which cannot be easily asked without disturbing it, the life of that man is one long sin against mankind. So again, some rhetoric here. One long sin against mankind. So if you're believing things without evidence, if you're pushing away doubts, that sort of thing, you're a big a sinner against mankind. To sum up, it is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. Now, Clifford wants to apply this to religious belief, which you might have suspected. And, he thinks that religious belief is superstition, and that people who believe in religion are being irresponsible and they're sinning against their brothers and sisters. And so here's Clifford's sort of stance, and in the next video we'll look at the response by William James, who believes that it's sometimes okay to believe on the basis of insufficient evidence.